Good afternoon, everyone. It's David Schlotthauer here in the home weather office with my first detailed hurricane forecast and discussion for the Atlantic for Saturday, May the 18th, 2024. This marks the official start for my first Atlantic hurricane seasonal forecast discussions here on the YouTube channel, and this is going to be a long series stretching more than 4 or 5 months here. So if you guys are new, welcome aboard and let's get started. So to start things off, here's a look at the 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook presented by the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida, and they release these 4 times a day. So what we're looking here is for any yellow colors that indicate a low chance, orange colors a medium chance, or red colors that indicate a high chance. And right now, there is clearly no chances of tropical formation in the next 7 days, according to the National Hurricane Center, for the Atlantic region, as well as the main development region, the Caribbean, and the Gulf of Mexico, and even up across the eastern seaboard, which is good news to see because I'll tell you what, this is not going to happen very often. Once we get into June, July, and especially in August and September, we're going to be seeing a very busy, perhaps a hyperactive Atlantic hurricane season. More on that, though, coming up for Tuesday when I release my next seasonal Atlantic forecast for you all that are really waiting patiently for that. Another product that I will frequently show in my tropical weather outlooks is the True Color GOES 16 satellite imagery provided by tropicaltidbits.com at Levi Cowan's website. Link in the description below this video. And what we have going on right now is generally quiet conditions, other than we have a lot of bad air quality down here across the central and western Gulf of Mexico. That's because we have a lot of wildfires burning down here in central Mexico, south of, say, the Bay of Campeche. We have a couple of wildfires going on there, but otherwise, not a whole lot of Saharan dust to talk about, which is very troubling because that allows things to really heat up out here with light trade winds and the lack of Saharan dust, right? Because when you have Saharan dust, a lot of the incoming heat from the sun goes back out into outer space. It doesn't really penetrate very well. And what that means is these waters are able to actually cool down a little bit when you have the Saharan dust and the trade winds to go along with that. Now, sometimes we can get some of these frontal bands or some of these cold frontal systems moving off the U.S. that could also focus some vorticity. We're not seeing that at all right now, but instead we're just seeing a little bit of shear that is cutting across the Atlantic, and that is why things are very quiet for the most part. Now, I will go ahead and briefly mention there is some activity over the Eastern Pacific that we are not really concerned about. So in today's update, we're really not going to focus on that, as these areas of interest are, number one, they have about a 10% chance of developing in the next 5 to 10 days. And two, they are going to be moving away from land areas. So even portions of, say, Mexico should not get hardly anything in the way of wind or any impacts other than pop-up showers and storms each afternoon is all you're going to see with that activity. Now, when we take a look at our sea surface temperatures, these are not your anomalies. These are the actual warmth, how much heat is in the oceans right now, and this is expressed in Celsius. So in other words, 26 degrees Celsius is 80 degrees, or roughly close to that, in Fahrenheit. And I'll tell you right now, the 80-degree Fahrenheit isotherm in the ocean is already mixing as far north as 25 degrees north in latitude. That is very far north for this time of the year. It doesn't get there usually until late June into early July. We're well ahead of schedule, folks. It's only mid-May, and we're already looking at sea surface temperatures this far north, already in the upper 70s to lower 80s. We got mid-80s down here across the Caribbean, across the islands here. Boy, folks, you're probably dipping your feet in the water, and you're probably going to leave a comment after or once this video's out, and you're going to tell me that, wow, water is toasty these last couple of days, because you're dealing with sea surface temperatures right now of 29 degrees Celsius. That is about 83 to 84 degrees Fahrenheit. There's even a little area down here in portions of the Bahamas that has sea surface temperatures of almost 30 degrees Fahrenheit, or no, 30 degrees Celsius. Whoa, if it was 30 degrees Fahrenheit, there would be some ice problems down there. It's 30 Celsius, which means about 84, 85 degrees in Fahrenheit. That is really, really warm for mid-May, folks. Mid-May, get around to it, right? Not mid-June, not mid-July. This is May, the 5th month of the year, and we're dealing with water temperatures that don't get to be realized until at least August. So we're well ahead of normal there. In the Gulf of Mexico, really warm as well. Pretty much the entire Gulf right now is at least 80 degrees Fahrenheit or warmer. That's very troubling because we're only in May and we have a long way to go. We yet to start and getting our first official named storm. And secondly, we officially don't start the Atlantic hurricane season until June the 1st. We have about a week and a half, 2 weeks-ish to go before we officially declare the first day of the Atlantic hurricane season, which at time I will be on vacation, but that doesn't mean I won't make these updates. I will figure out a way to do that once I'm away in Fort Bragg, California. So now looking at our sea surface temperature anomaly, this is very concerning. Mark Sedeth has talked about this. Dr. Phil Klockspog has talked about this. Jack Sillen. These people that are professionals know what they're talking about, and they are saying that these waters down here, and I'm not doing this to cause fear, to cause hyperbole, as a lot of people would say. This is not to cause that, but this is to tell you all just how far above average we actually are this time of the year. And I'll tell you what right now, some of these waters, like right in here, I'm going to circle some areas. This area, and especially off the coast here, say near the Cabo Verde Islands of Africa, these waters are so far above average, we don't typically see these water temperatures, the actual Fahrenheit, to arrive usually in mid to late August. We're seeing water temperatures already like that in mid-May. In other words, we're running about 3 to almost 4 degrees Celsius above average in these areas that I've just circled in. Actually, not 4 degrees, but it's close. More like 2.5 to 3.5 degrees Celsius. Either way you put it, they are record warm out there in the main development region, which is this area. So it's kind of right in here, this sweet old box. Okay, we're seeing water temperatures of at least 2 degrees Celsius or greater. We're not talking a Celsius. We're talking 2 above average. Okay, I mean, even if we had the normal sea surface temperatures, that would be enough to bring significant hurricanes for the season, right? But we're talking water temperatures that are double that. And that really is an eye-opener of what is to come when we get into the peak of the season. Here's the Gulf of Mexico, really warm, quite warm, really recovering very quickly from about a month ago. Some of these waters in the Western Gulf are very warm, of at least 2.5 degrees Celsius. And I'll tell you, right here's where it's rather cool on average in a large scale sense, with very warm, the Iberian Current, folks, really warm this year. That horseshoe shape is asking for trouble. Once we get into, say, mid to late June, especially in the peak from about the 21st of August through September, I think we're going to have many hurricanes to track, and some of them could be major, if not pretty intense. Another way we could visualize of how much heat is being stored in the ocean is looking at our upper ocean heat content map from the University of Miami in Florida. This is probably the 3rd season that I've used this webpage. Really a good site to look at. There will be a link in the description below this video. And I'll tell you, this is May 18th, 2020. Okay, why are we using this? Well, because what I'm about to show you is very concerning. Something that I have not even fathomed or looked at in quite a while. Actually, we're looking at a historic record upper ocean heat content right now on the above average scale. So to put this into perspective, this gave us 30 named storms. This upper ocean heat content of the month of May. We didn't have major hurricanes in May, but this profile, this time 4 years ago, again, rewind 4 years ago, this is what we had, and look of what we have right now. Let's take a look, folks. Here it is. Get ready. Spoiler alert now. This is what we're dealing with. Very, very concerning. Like, come on, folks. Like, you're going to not tell me this season's going to be dead. I mean, there's a lot of heat content really just pushed deep into the ocean. And some of these orange colors right in here, like near, say, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, got a little bit of orange colors over here in the central Leeward and Windward Islands. Are you kidding me? That is really, really significant. That is right up in here on the scale, somewhere in this little window on our upper ocean heat content scale. That is in mid-May, folks. Remember, if we go back to 2020, that's what it looked like. And this is what it looks like this year. So if this gave us 30 named storms plus, what is this going to give us? We shall find out. But some of the agencies like the Weather Channel, Colorado State University, Penn State, which is Pennsylvania State University, there are some very high numbers out there that I do not want to show you until I release my next Atlantic Hurricane Seasonal Forecast on Tuesday, because they are definitely in the 20s. Some of them are in the low 30s as far as number of named storms. So this season, all in all, is really asking for trouble when you put this much heat content into the ocean in the Atlantic, especially in the Caribbean, really, really the epicenter of all of this. Again, this is not to cause fear mongering. I'm relaying of what I'm seeing, and what I'm seeing is a huge contrast from just 4 years ago, what gave us a hyperactive season, and what this season's going to bring us. So another product that I like to look at is the total or tropical intensity potential. So now I want to be clear in my videos, all right? I will be showing this fairly often, not in every update, but as much as I can in these tropical weather discussions, is that what you're looking at here is based solely on upper ocean heat content and sea surface temperature data. This does not take into an account of atmospheric conditions. I really, really, really need to be clear on that, okay? Because a lot of you, I think it was last year or the year before, I used this product, and some of you were like, you should not be using that. That's going to cause fear. Because, you know, I'm not trying to cause fear, but what I'm trying to show you all is, again, when you combine how warm the sea surface temperatures are at the surface with the upper ocean heat content below the surface, what is the potential if everything came together, if we had plenty of moisture, very little wind shear in the atmosphere throughout the large-scale pattern, and if we had enough, or if we haven't or didn't have a lot of dust to contend with. This is absolutely the worst case scenario. If everything came together, how strong could these systems actually get in a hyperactive favorable environment, or whatever we should call it, a very favorable environment, however you want to say it, all right? So, in other words, the Caribbean, the water temperatures, the upper ocean heat content could favor very intense hurricanes. I'm not going to give out a category, but all I'm going to say, it could favor some of the most intense hurricanes that we've seen since Irma, Maria, and even Matthew, which happened all down here, okay? So what we're seeing here, again, is that potential. If everything came together on this day, what could end up happening? Okay, and right now, boy, waters are scarily warm down there. And this is the maximum winds and category that it could favor. And I'll tell you right now, intense to violent hurricane category territory in the Caribbean, in portions of the Bahamas, as well as in the western main development region of the Atlantic. All right, now just because you see category 5s here, we don't have to have a category 5, right? It is very hard to get a hurricane that intense because you have to have everything in place. 0 to 5 knots of wind shear, very high upper ocean heat content, and a lot of moisture in the deep column of the atmosphere. Everything must come together for such a violent hurricane to materialize. The chances of that happening this year are certainly higher than what we had last year, but they are still relatively low comparably versus if we had a Category 1. More than likely, we will have a Category 1 before we get a Category 5, in other words. But I'll tell you, sea surface temperatures, upper ocean heat content is absolutely volatile this time of the year. That could favor very intense, and I repeat, major violent hurricanes in the Caribbean and perhaps in portions of the main development region. And I don't like saying that. I really don't like saying that, folks. I'm not trying to laugh it out here too, but I'm telling you, this season is a textbook of what could happen in 2020, 2.0, maybe 2005 2.0. We shall see and wait on all what happens. So this is a look at the European. This is now a look at the Madden-Julian oscillation. So again, other factors play a role in when tropical waves develop, when they become tropical storms or hurricanes, right? And another contributor to that is the Madden-Julian oscillation, or MJO for short. We've used this in my winter forecasts. Once in a while, I'll kind of bring this up. Dr. Daniel Swain will do it, but also I bring it up during my tropical weather outlook discussions as well. Not very frequently because it's hard to understand, but in simply, when the MJO, see the line right here, see this dot? This is where the MJO is right now. It's in phase 3 and 4. So it's in Western Africa, in the Indian Ocean, and over Indonesia at the moment. All right, this makes a circumnavigation within about 60 days or so. It kind of goes around the unit circle like this. Sometimes it kind of hangs all in here, and sometimes it gets very amplified and wants to do this, may want to backtrack a little bit, it gets back in there. All right, but when it's way out from the unit circle, it's very amplified. When it's in the unit circle, it is very unamplified. It's very weak, the signal out there for any precipitation patterns. Right now, we're in a fairly weak to moderate state of the MJO. It's not very amplified, but some of the ensembles do want to amplify that quite crazily in the next 2 to 3 weeks or so, and that's what the ensemble here from the Euro shows. But usually within this area, okay, so I'm going to kind of draw a line. Now this actually, I'll put a check mark right here. Check means favorable. So favorable for the Atlantic is in phase 2, 3, and typically in phase 4. It becomes kind of a Willy Wonka if you are in phase 5, phase 6, and then it's usually kind of a big X in phase 7, 8, and typically even maybe sometimes in phase 1 you can get some early portion of activity, especially in the Caribbean, even in the Gulf of Mexico. But it really is these phases, these 3 right in here, phase 2 through 4, when the tropical waves off of Africa, the Cape Verde season that is, it's when it really is amplified, usually in August and September, and that's when we typically see a lot of the development if the MJO is able to kind of come around. Now, climatology speaking, though, you could have a lot of development even without the MJO. This is what we call a convective coupled Kelvin wave, is when we get a lot of convection in a smaller area, and then looking at the MJO is in a much bigger area. And another way to look at this is this diagram from NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, showing what the MJO is. So across the equator, in a Mercator projection here, you'll get areas of rising motion, so that's thunderstorm development. Tropical cyclone formation is usually favorable under this environment because you get divergent flow that lowers the pressures at the surface, and then you get sinking on the other side. Remember, air is not created equal here. When air goes up, it has to go somewhere. It spreads out, but then it just can't spread out and disappear. It actually sinks in other parts of the world across the equator. So usually this is how it works. If you get rising motion over Africa, over Indonesia, and the Western Pacific, usually get sinking motion over the Atlantic Basin, over Central America, and the Eastern Pacific. Usually the suppressed phase, higher surface pressures, drier air aloft, unfavorable conditions, and that's when you get Saharan dust outbreaks. More on that in just a little bit. So this is, again, the different phases, and usually it's more prevalent over Africa, over India, and over the Indonesia area. And this is the Mercator projection. So here is Central America, here North America, here is Australia, Indonesia, India in that area, and then here is Africa. And so usually, again, that phase 2 right in here is generally fairly favorable for seedlings of tropical waves to come off of Africa. Okay, now another thing I want to show you all, let's see, I think it's that one. We can use this map. I think it does a good job at projecting. Maybe it doesn't. Actually, it doesn't. So we're going to just use this. This is a little bit of the modified version of that. But Africa is way off over here. Okay, and so we can see another dust plume coming off of Africa. After all, there is a suppressive phase. We got a little bit of dust coming off, but not a whole lot as anything to be like, oh, it's going to be a busting season. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Not much dust moving into the Windward Islands, Leeward Islands, but a little bit of some dust moving across the Caribbean and into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, wind shear, not a big problem at all in the Caribbean or in the Atlantic, and that is climatology for you. This is not the favorable period for any cyclones or anything to develop because we got a lot of this remaining shear from the winter season, these jet streams, these split flows that create a lot of wind shear. And simply, when it's red, it's unfavorable with shear, and then if it's yellow, it's neutral, and green areas that you'll see quite a bit in my discussions is deemed favorable for tropical cyclones. Now, not every green area means we're going to have something because usually the shear decreases within a upper level low pressure system or what we call a TUT, which could also help to not allow things to develop very well because the shear is on the southern side of that. So in general, right now, the Atlantic is still shut down with activity. We're not going to see anything anytime soon yet in the next week, which is good. But again, I want to be clear, that does not mean we are not going to ever see tropical cyclones. Now, before we do get talking about the global computer models, as far as the tropics go, if we're going to see any development, I did want to, again, share and iterate to the whole Saharan dust thing that some of you probably left a comment on in my last couple of seasonal outlooks on the tropics. First of all, Saharan dust, yes, it does prevent tropical storms or hurricanes to develop, but it's only temporary, all right? So just because you guys see and the news says, oh, big Saharan dust outbreak, big SAL outbreak, that's the short term for it, does not mean, oh, there's a lot of dust coming off of Africa. This season's a washout. Don't worry about it, folks. It's not going to be active. That's a very, very dumb thing to actually think about because even during the year 2020, we had a mighty Saharan dust outbreak. I think it was like in June or something or July. And yet, that season gave us 30 plus named storms. Dust alone does not shut down the season. All right? Does that make sense? All right? Not trying to be rude here, but I just wanted to clear things up because some of you are probably wondering about that, oh, we're going to have more dust. You watch, we're going to have more dust. Believe the experts, believe myself, because there is a lot of evidence to back up a very busy hyperactive season coming this year because of La Nina that we're dealing with, which actually, you know what? I wanted to show you all that very, very quickly in my discussion here. I know we're kind of backtracking, but I wanted to show you that very quickly, very, very fast, okay? So if we look at the Enzo regions, this is what we're dealing with, okay? That is a mighty La Nina developing in the face of this in the Atlantic. Now you're probably going to think differently, right? So again, very busy season based on what we have there coming. Okay, back to the models we go. Here's a look at the Euro for today's update and what it shows, or what you're looking at here, and I'm going to try to simplify this as much as I can. This is your 850, again, 850 millibar cyclonic vorticity. How much spin there is in the atmosphere. What we're looking at for tight areas of spin in the atmosphere. Something that looks kind of like this up here on the map. See that? This is what we're looking at, but first it needs to be down here. Okay, we have a few here. We got like the trio of little vorticity spin-ups here, but again, because of the background state not favoring anything, we're not going to see a whole lot of development with that. And we can see here in the next 5 days, good old stable, strong, sprawling Bermuda high here, going to keep things at check. Might see a bit of Saharan dust from time to time kind of coming off of Africa, and we might see a little bit of a wave here on the southwestern fringe of that ridge on the Euro. More on that on the GFS in a little bit, but really nothing in common at all in the next 10 days, and I rarely go that far out. Now, once we get more into the active period, we're going to scrunch this down to like 5 days out on the models, because a lot changes in 5 days, perhaps, okay? But right now, nothing to be concerned about at all in the Atlantic, and means good news, right? And this is late May. We'll see. Maybe late May, we might get some Central America gyre development down there in the southwestern Caribbean or in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, here's a look at the US GFS model, the American Global Computer Model, also very similar to the Euro in the short term. However, it wants to go ballistic. You know what the GFS is up to. It does this all the time, where it takes a lot of this vorticity coming off of the ABC Islands, okay, and it just wants to just kind of coalesce one of those areas, and it just wants to go crazy with it, right? Usually, we've seen this many times in the GFS, it oversamplifies the vorticity maximum coming off the ABC Island there. And right now at the moment, the Euro, the Canadian are not picking up on that. And so the GFS is probably being a little bit on the bullish side at the moment. But if this does develop, though, more than likely it's just going to bring you quite a bit of rainfall and some breezy winds. Nothing too significant at all. No significant tropical storm or hurricane to be concerned about, because this whole background state is just not favorable yet to give us any powerful storms in the month of May. And we're not supposed to have major hurricanes or hurricanes in the month of May. And if we did, something's really wrong and something big could be coming, right? I don't see any of that right now at the moment, which is good. Now, towards the end of the GFS, this just came in. This is the latest run. All right, that is new to me. This was not in on the 12Z run from this morning, and you see it really wants to just go ballistic down here. And let's kind of zoom in. This, my guys, is what we look for on the vorticity map of a hurricane. That is a very compact hurricane in itself, with pressures down at 972 millibars. That could even be a major hurricane, perhaps, because this is not a high-resolution model. And that's the Central American gyre development, and that's what we'll have to really watch closely for. Of course, there's a little bit of shear here, so there is going to certainly be an interesting aspect to all of this on how the GFS really plays out with it. But right now, of course, this is very far out. I mean, forecasting that in about 16 days is very stupid to do, and I don't even know why I'm showing it here on today's video. All right, well, that is going to conclude my very first, folks, in a series of hurricane forecast discussions here on the YouTube channel. I decided to kind of get a little early start to this, just because, you know what, the NHC is doing their outlooks, Weather Nazario's starting to do more outlooks, Mark Sedeth, and now Pat's Path Predictor. So I'm going to kind of jump onto the chase and start my outlooks today. And not every day will I make these, but as we get into the season, you're going to start seeing a lot and a lot more of these videos out. I'm not going to do any more severe weather videos. Instead, I'll be doing live streams on tornadoes or whatever is going on in the U.S. And we're really going to be focusing on the hurricane season from here on out, at least through late October or early November. So get used to seeing a lot of those tropical weather thumbnails, folks, because yeah, it's coming. The series starts today. But anyways, thank you all for watching. Be sure you share this, like, and subscribe for more latest tropical weather outlooks, because a lot of you are watching this from the Caribbean as well as from the Dominican Republic. And also stay tuned for Tuesday's seasonal outlook. Okay, I'm going to do a full rundown of what my numbers are showing and what my thoughts are for the upcoming Atlantic hurricane season. It's going to be my third one in within a month or so. So I'm excited to present you all that here on the channel. Until next time, I'll be back with you more tomorrow with more weather content.